All right, good afternoon. Bear with me. We've got quite a few things for you today that we had held up since yesterday. Once again, remember to mute your microphones. Make sure you're sending both audio and video if you want to speak at any of the briefings to come. Immediately following my briefing, Reem Abaza, the spokesperson for the President of the General Assembly, will brief you. And then at 1 p.m., Ambassador Sven Jurgensen, the permanent representative of the Republic of Estonia and President of the Security Council for the merry month of May, will be here to brief you on the Council's program of work for this month. Both briefings will take place on the same virtual platform, so you do not need to hang up and redial. Just do please stay connected. All right. Today, the Secretary General launched a policy brief on how the COVID-19 pandemic is impacting older persons. The brief provides analysis and recommendations to address the challenges older people across the world are facing, such as higher fatality rates, risks of poverty, discrimination, and isolation. The Secretary General said he is deeply concerned about this also on a personal level, not just because he's an older person himself, because he is responsible for an even older mother. The brief has four main messages. First, that no person is expendable regardless of their age. Second, that we need improved social support to reach older people. And third, that all social, economic, and humanitarian responses must take the needs of older persons fully into account, from universal health care coverage to social protection, decent work, and pensions. And finally, that we should not treat older persons as invisible or powerless. The Secretary General added that as we look to recover better, we'll need ambition and vision to build more inclusive, sustainable, and age-friendly societies that are fit for the future. And today is, of course, May Day, known officially in the UN as the International Day of Labor. And in his message for the day, the Secretary General is pointing out that this year, with the COVID-19 pandemic unfolding around us, we are truly seeing workers who too often toil unseen. Perhaps, as never before, he said, we recognize the role that essential workers play in keeping our societies functioning, getting food to the table and markets, keeping public transportation running, and of course, ensuring the operation of our hospitals and health systems. The Secretary General noted that the International Labour Organization has reported this week that the global workforce will be hit with the equivalent of the loss of more than 300 million jobs. And as we seek to build back better in the wake of this pandemic, Mr. Guterres said the well-being of people must be at the center of economic and social policies, with a special focus on those who are being furthest left behind. And turning to the UN response to the spread of the virus, as you know, logistics is an essential element of the pandemic response, especially in a context where commercial flights are disrupted and aid agencies, as well as health authorities, struggle to get supplies to fragile settings. Last night, a Boeing 757 cargo plane contracted by the World Food Programme on behalf of the humanitarian community was the first flight to leave the new global humanitarian response hub located in Liège in Belgium. The plane was loaded with almost 16 metric tons of medical supplies and personal protective equipment to be used in Burkina Faso, Ghana, and the Republic of Congo. This is part of a global logistics network being set up by the World Food Programme. Humanitarian response hubs in Belgium, Dubai, and China, close to where medical supplies are manufactured, will link to regional hubs in Ethiopia, Ghana, Malaysia, Panama, Dubai, and South Africa. In these locations, a fleet of smaller aircraft will move cargo and personnel into priority countries. Over the next 6 weeks, WFP, which runs the UN's humanitarian air service, expects to transport the equivalent of 37 Boeing 747s from China and Malaysia to 130 countries around the world. WFP is also mounting a regional passenger air service to ferry humanitarian and health workers across the East and West Africa to overcome disruptions to commercial air services. The first flights are expected in the coming days. Once this service is fully up and running, as many as 350 cargo and 350 passenger flights could be flying every month. And as you can imagine, funding is required, and the World Food Program is appealing for $350 million as an initial donation to kickstart the global common logistics network. And for its part, the UN Children's Fund called today for support to unblock a massive backlog of vaccine shipments. This is being caused by the unprecedented logistical constraints related to COVID-19 mitigation measures, including lockdowns in some countries. Since the week of March 22nd, UNICEF has seen a 70 to 80% reduction in planned vaccine shipments due to the dramatic decline in commercial flights and limited availability of charters. Compounding the challenge is the exorbitant cost of securing flights, with freight rates at 100 to 200% above normal and charter flights even more costly. UNICEF has added that even before the COVID-19 pandemic, measles and other vaccines were out of reach for 20 million children below the age of 1 every year. And our colleagues at the UN Refugee Agency today expressed alarm at the increasing desperate situation of those forcibly displaced by conflict and violence, particularly in low and middle-income countries, which shelter more than 85% of the world's refugees. Across all major refugee operations and despite challenges, UNHCR is working to provide emergency assistance, such as cash-based assistance, shelter spaces, and inclusion of refugees in national public health responses. Urgent action is required to help the most vulnerable refugees and internally displaced persons, especially where they have no access to state-run social protection schemes. And turning to some country issues, patrols are continuing today in the city of Ndele in the Central African Republic, following violence earlier this week in which 25 civilians died and dozens more were injured. The mission continues to engage community leaders and armed groups to see tensions and promote social cohesion. In a joint statement issued yesterday, the African Union, the Economic Community of Central African States, otherwise known as ECAS, and the UN mission in the country strongly condemned the attack. They added their concern that this week's violence could trigger a humanitarian crisis. Several hundreds of people have fled their homes. As we mentioned earlier, many of them have sought protection around the peacekeeping compound. The African Union, ECAS, and the UN are all calling for investigations and accountability for the perpetrators, adding that this attack is even more reprehensible because it occurred only a few days after a government initiative to foster reconciliation and relief for the Ndele population. And the UN support mission in Libya is aware that Libyan and international calls for a ceasefire, including the Libyan National Army's constructive statement announcing a truce during Ramadan and the response of the government of national accord. The mission calls upon both parties to seize this opportunity to immediately halt all military operations, resume the 5.5 Joint Military Commission talks on a virtual basis if needed, with the goal to reach a permanent ceasefire based upon the draft agreements proposed by the mission on February 23rd. The UN mission welcomes the initiatives that will allow the Libyan people who have borne the brunt of the conflict to observe the holy month of Ramadan in peace. The mission urges all parties to refrain from any provocative acts or statements that threaten the prospect of a genuine truce and its sustainability. This includes attempts to use periods of calm by one side or the other to reinforce positions. The UN mission believes that the ultimate guarantee of a lasting ceasefire rests not only with the goodwill of the parties to the conflict, the commitment of the international community to abide by its obligations to pursue and persevere peace and security in Libya. From South Africa, the UN team there yesterday launched a $136 million emergency appeal to help up to 10 million people in vulnerable communities facing COVID-19 related risks in areas such as health, water, sanitation, food security, and gender-based violence. This appeal comes as South Africa begins a gradual relaxation of a 35-day lockdown and closure of borders. In addition to the health emergency, the economic shock caused by COVID-19 is heavily impacting livelihoods, especially among women and children. The resident coordinator of Nardos Bekele Thomas said that she was encouraged by the government's consistent messages that the COVID-19 recovery will usher in a different mode of development, focusing more on inclusiveness to make sure that we leave no one behind. And in Kenya, the UN team there has been supporting the government's response even before the first confirmed case of COVID-19. The UN team has deployed more than 80 of its staff and volunteers to support the government's response, including in crisis communications. Resident coordinator Siddharth Chatterjee is leading the UN's comprehensive health, humanitarian, and socioeconomic response to support the government's efforts. UNDP's analysis of the economic impact of the pandemic led the government to establish a fund to boost cash transfers, focusing on the poorest people. And on human rights, the UN's Human Rights Office partnered with social justice centers to monitor the impact on informal settlements in more than 1,500 households across 8 counties in Kenya. UNAIDS and the UN Development Program are also supporting Kenyan NGOs to ensure that the country's response has a strong human rights focus. And UN Habitat is partnering with Canada and Norway to set up hand-washing facilities in informal settlements and slums in Nairobi. UNICEF has also distributed thousands of critical infection prevention and control supplies, while UNESCO is training journalists to prevent the spread of misinformation and discrimination. And in Sudan, we, along with our partners, are helping with the government-led efforts to respond to the virus. This includes testing with the aim of reaching 600 tests per day. The World Health Organization has trained 50 lab staff on the sample collection, transportation, and testing, and has also provided personal protective equipment. We and our partners are also working to spread information about the pandemic, with tips being sent to more than 13.5 kits, sent to more than 3.5 mobile phone subscribers daily. Sorry, those are tips, not kits, being sent to mobile phone subscribers. And alongside the response to COVID-19, aid organizations are also working on emergency related to conflict and natural disaster in South Sudan, providing some 2 million people with food. And the COVID-19 preparedness and response plan for Sudan calls for $47 million for the next 3 months. And in Ukraine, the UN and our humanitarian partners are supporting government-led response to the pandemic in strengthening laboratories, detection capacity, and enhancing national and regional networks. The virus pandemic has disrupted limited economic activities in eastern Ukraine, which has already been devastated by over 6 years of armed conflict. The UN and our humanitarian partners are support include procurement of personal protective equipment and test kits, including the conflict-affected areas on both sides of the contact line. The ability to organize humanitarian aid convoys through the contact line remains limited, and we continue to advocate for unimpeded access to conflict areas, conflict-impacted population on both sides of the contact line. And on COVID-19, a COVID-19 plan for Ukraine is seeking $69 million to reach over 2 million people with life-saving assistance until the end of the year. And in Kosovo, the special representative there and head of the mission in the UNMIK, Azaya Tanin, expressed concern over the growing number of reported incidents directed against non-majority communities during the recent weeks. These include arson and intimidating graffiti. Mr. Tanin urged Kosovo authorities to act swiftly to respond and find the perpetrators and publicly discourage such acts. He called on all members of society to bear in mind the fragile circumstances Kosovo is facing during the ongoing pandemic and emphasized the need to promote unity and solidarity. And the UN mission in Lebanon says that in the past week, it has donated personal protective equipment and other medical supplies to social and medical centers in Al-Khala and other parts of southwestern Lebanon. The peacekeeping mission reports that it has also assisted the establishment of a prefabricated triage room in Tibmin Governor Hospital to check patients with COVID-19 symptoms. And peacekeepers also donated veterinary medicines to shepherds and farmers in 13 villages across southeastern Lebanon. And the World Meteorological Organization today said that depletion of the ozone layer reached unprecedented levels over parts of the Arctic this spring. The last time similarly strong ozone depletion was observed in this region was during the spring of 2011. WMO said this shows that the Arctic's stratosphere continues to be vulnerable to ozone depleting substances linked to human activity. It added the depletion would have been even worse if it had not been for the Montreal Protocol, which led to a phase out of substances such as CFCs. And I want to flag that Sunday is Press Freedom Day. This year, the theme is journalism without fear or favor. In his message, the Secretary General said that journalists and medical workers are crucial to helping us make informed decisions. And as the world fights the COVID-19 pandemic, those decisions can make the difference between life or death. The press provides antidote, verified, scientific, fact-based news and analysis, he said, while calling on governments and others to guarantee that journalists can do their jobs throughout the pandemic and beyond. UNESCO is organizing free live-streamed event on Sunday to mark the day. It's called Difference Day Conference 2020. And from May 4th through the 6th, there will be several webinars and online discussions on various social media platforms. Details are available on the UNESCO website. And I leave you on a sad note. We mourn the passing of Augustine Mahiga. The Secretary General conveys his deepest condolences to the government and people of Tanzania and the family of the late minister. Mr. Mahiga, an accomplished statesman and a committed diplomat who served the UN as special representative and head of the UN mission in Somalia from 2010 to 2013. He played a fundamental role in the advancement of state building in Somalia, assisting in finalizing provisional constitution and advancing the electoral preparation. At the time of his passing, he was the Minister for Constitutional and Legal Affairs for Tanzania, and he had previously served as Foreign Minister, and you must all remember him from his time as Permanent Representative of Tanzania from 2003 to 2010, and we send our condolences to his family. Okay, I'll take some questions, and then we will go to the other two briefings. Let me put on my glasses so I can see who's trying to ask me questions. I think Pam has the first question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Steph. The Secretary General gave an interview to BBC. We wrote about it today. He talked about lessons learned. There's been a call to have an investigation of the WHO from a lot of different places. What is his view of an investigation that would begin on what the lessons learned are?
Well, I think the Secretary has been very clear a number of times, very publicly. He has said that there will be a time to look back, to do lessons learned about how international organizations, member states, and others reacted and dealt with this pandemic. He does not think that the time to do this is now, but he does strongly believe that there will be a time to start such a lessons learned exercise.
Can I just follow up? His point was that world leaders have not their dysfunction has allowed the virus to spread. Can you be a little more specific about what they've done wrong?
You know, I would urge you to read back what the Secretary General said in the press conference, what he said in his latest interview, is that he feels that there was not a coordinated approach and there was not a global effort to follow some of the guidance from the World Health Organization. So I think he was very clear, and he was as clear as he wanted to be. Evelyn, and then Edie. Evelyn?
Yes, hello, Steph. The Cuban ambassador to the UN has protested that the Americans are not guarding the embassy in Washington, which was attacked. Has she reached out at all to the Secretary General? And secondly,
sorry, who complained about what?
The Cuban ambassador to the United Nations. Anna,
Complaint?
since the
Right, what was the complaint?
that the embassy in Washington, which was attacked, was not being guarded properly.
Okay, I'm not aware of that. That seems to be a bilateral issue, but I'm not aware of any involvement of the Secretary General.
And on the leadership,
yeah.
on the leadership issue, does the is the Secretary General and WHO, do they think they can fill the gap?
Neither the head of WHO nor the Secretary General is head of has the authority of a head of state. So I think that the Secretary General was very clear in what he was saying. Edie?
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Steph. I have a couple of questions. First, following up on Libya, what is the Secretary General's reaction to Libya's UN-recognized government rejecting the unilateral ceasefire by the forces loyal to Khalifa Haftar for Ramadan? Secondly, there have been explosions in southern Yemen at a UNESCO World Heritage Site by Southern rebels, who are one of the groups that reacted positively to the Secretary General's ceasefire call. What is his reaction to that? And can you confirm that the Secretary General has extended the order for UN staff to work virtually until June 30th?
No, I will take it backwards. I think there was a leak of claiming that there was a memo where the SG had asked for UN staff to be extended. That is, I don't know where that came from, but that's completely false. There was no such recommendation to continue teleworking has yet been made. The order right now stands till the end of May. The senior emergency management group will be meeting before that. They will be making a recommendation to the Secretary General on whether or not to extend it further past May 31st. On Yemen, I had not seen that report. We'll check. Obviously, UNESCO World Heritage Sites should be protected, and our message is for everyone to lay down their arms, especially at this time of grave threat from the virus in Yemen. And on your first question on Libya, I would refer you to what I just said from the mission, which is that all parties should avoid any confrontation or verbal escalation and ensure that the people of Libya are able to pass a peaceful Ramadan. Okay, let's go next to, hold on a second. Let me, I have to look at, let's go to Maria. Maria Tass. Hi, Maria.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm here.
Excellent.
Great. So the question is, does UN monitor the situation with hundreds or even thousands of tourists left abroad far from their homes and because of travel restrictions? And does UN consider their rights to be violated?
The short answer is I'm not aware that we're particularly monitoring the situations of tourists. There have been cases of UN involvement, notably the High Commissioner for Human Rights, issues having to do with Bolivian citizens who were stranded outside of the border. I think what's important is that people put in place policies that are humane, where people's rights are respected. And most importantly, I would say that whatever the status of a person in a specific country, whether they're a refugee, whether they are a migrant, whether they are people with qualified legal status or tourists, that they have access to health care and health facilities the same as the citizens of this country, especially during a crisis such as this one. Maricela from Yumuri Shimbun. Okay, I think the question says, I saw there was a petition on change.org that reached 1 million signatures calling for the resignation of WHO Director General Dr. Tedros, and wondering if we'd received this petition. No, we have not received this petition. I would refer you back to the statement the Secretary General made previously, saluting the leadership of Dr. Tedros. But obviously, as you all know, WHO is a separate entity from the United Nations with its own governing body. Yoshita. Yoshita Singh.
Hi,
Yoshita.
Steph, can you hear? Hi.
I can hear you and I can see you. How are you?
Thanks. Steph, India has lodged a strong protest with Pakistan over unprovoked firing at the line of control. One Indian national was killed, and Pakistan has been engaging in this unprovoked firing along LOC. Given the SG's call for a global ceasefire, how does he view these shellings from the Pakistani side along the LOC in these past few days? Thanks.
I have not gotten any updates from our colleagues in the in UNMOGIP on this, but what I can tell you is that the Secretary General's appeal for a global ceasefire is exactly that. It is global, and it should be applied everywhere. Michelle from Reuters, I believe.
Hey, Steph, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I only see a black screen, so I'm not sure it's you. But I'll take you.
Yeah, it is me. You're not getting video today. A question, slightly. Well, no, it's not hypothetical. There's a lot of discussion. There's been a lot of discussion recently about the Iran nuclear deal and the snapback mechanism, and whether the US might be able to trigger that in the Security Council. People are talking about legal opinions, a lot of messy legal issues. Is there a situation where the Security Council can ask the Secretariat for a legal opinion on something?
Without getting into, as you put it, the messy situation around this, member states always have an option, whether individually or as a group, as a body, to ask for legal opinion from the Secretary General.
So technically, the Security Council as a whole could do that.
Member states and legislative bodies of the UN can always put in requests of whatever type to the Secretary General.
So has anyone put in a request for a legal opinion as to whether?
Not that I'm aware. Hussein Ibrahim.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hi. Well, as you know, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has completely ended the practice of punishing convicted by flogging. Are there any reaction from the United Nations about the kingdom taking this step?
I personally have not seen that, but let me take a look. We've always obviously stood against cruel and unusual cruel punishment, and there's been a body of work on the human rights front on that. But let me check into that report, and I will get you something a bit more formal. Okay. Anything? Did I miss anybody? Florencio? Florencia's typing. Nope. Thank you very much. Have a happy weekend, and hopefully it's all different than our weeks. And of course, it's now time for Reem to brief on behalf of the President of the General Assembly, and then she will be followed by the president of the Security Council for May, the ambassador of Estonia. So I thank you, and I leave the floor to Reem.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks, bye. Reem, go ahead. Reem, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steph. Good afternoon, everyone. The President of the UN General Assembly, Tijani Mohammed Bandi, held a virtual meeting yesterday afternoon with the chairs of the regional groups to discuss options for elections without plenary meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic. The meeting included a presentation by Under-Secretary General for General Assembly and Conference Management, DGACM, on the possible options for elections. As you know, the General Assembly is scheduled to hold 4 elections in June. Those are of non-permanent members of the Security Council, members of the Economic and Social Council, the President of the 75th session of the General Assembly, and the Vice Presidents of the 75th session. The options prepared by DGACM include elections requiring secret ballots, with member states casting of ballots at a specific venue or by electronic means. All details about these options are available on the PGA's website. I will share a direct link on the briefing notes that will be posted on the website. And I have to note here that decisions will be taken soon regarding meetings scheduled in June. As maybe you remember that I mentioned during the last briefing that the PGA has appointed the permanent representative of Jamaica to the UN as facilitator for the e-voting process, excluding elections. The ambassador invited member states and observers to participate in a virtual meeting today at 3 to discuss and explore ways of taking decisions in the General Assembly by vote within the context of the current restrictions surrounding the holding of large in-person gatherings in plenary during the COVID-19 pandemic. And earlier in the week, the General Assembly co-coordinators for COVID-19 related initiatives, the permanent representatives of Afghanistan and Croatia to the UN, held a virtual town hall meeting with member states. The PGA said at the meeting that the only way out of the pandemic is solidarity. COVID-19 has highlighted how connected we are and showcased our dependency on each other. It also teaches us, as the PGA said, that no country is equipped to fight this challenge alone. Mr. Mohammed Bandi added that the General Assembly needs to speak with one voice. COVID-19 is an unprecedented test, but it also comes with opportunities to send a strong political message to the international community and ultimately to shape the world we want to see coming out of this crisis as nations united. More on the PGA's website. And of course, Sunday is World Press Freedom Day. In his message for the occasion, the PGA said that the crucial role of journalism is even more relevant in the unprecedented wake of COVID-19, when our very lives depend on a balanced perspective of unbiased information, constructive public debates, and credible accountability. The PGA added that the coronavirus disease pandemic has given new rise to flows of misinformation, as well as biased news amplifying threats to press freedom around the world. We must continue to defend a free world press. And the full message is on the PGA's website. And my last item is on Monday, the President of the General Assembly will be participating in a virtual high-level meeting organized by the chairmanship of the non-aligned movement. The PGA is expected to stress on the importance of multilateralism and solidarity to defeat COVID-19 and other coming challenges. And we will share the remarks on Monday as usual. And if you have any questions, please, I'm open. And from Florence.
About the...
Can you start again, please?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, I just asked if when you say that a decision would be taken soon about the way to elect new members for the Security Council. Is it a decision next week?
Now we are discussing and consulting with member states. The PGA is consulting with member states on the mechanisms, the possible mechanisms to hold elections. But I said that the decisions on June meetings will be announced very soon, whether the meetings will be held in person or virtually in general. But the elections, that's why we're preparing ahead of time. If the meetings will not be held in person, so we have mechanisms, we will have mechanisms in place for the elections. Okay, and I have Edie from AP.
Thank you very much, Reem. Nice to see you. Can you tell us whether there are any resolutions still pending in the GA, including anything on COVID-19? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the question. No, until now, there is no pending, there are no pending resolutions under silence procedure. And Maria?
Hi, Reem. Very nice to see you. So the traditional question for you, is there any update on the high-level week in September?
Not yet. And as I mentioned, we will be announcing soon decisions on June. So we don't want to take, we want to take it step by step based on solid advice from the medical director of the UN and from the relevant bodies, of course. Okay, and Dulcie from PASPLO. PASPLO, do you have a question? So maybe until you, okay, until you come up. Abdel Hamid.
Yes, thank you, Reem. I have a question. Hold the press conference.
Can you please repeat? I couldn't hear you. You froze for a second.
I'd like to meet with the to come and do a press conference and meet with us. You know, we haven't seen him for a long time.
Abdel Hamid, I'm having trouble hearing you. The image is frozen. So maybe try again.
Okay, I'm just asking if it's possible for the PGA to come and hold a press conference. Has been doing these press conferences frequent.
Yes, no, absolutely. This is on our mind, and the PGA would really want to do that. And but we want to wait until we finish with the main consultations on major things, so he can update you with the substance on what has happened on this or that or that. So, but this is on our mind for sure.
Does he physically come to the UN building and go to his?
Actually, on Monday he will be. Absolutely. On Monday, he will be at the UN office. He will be participating in the virtual meeting of the NAM. And also he has a meeting with the Fifth Committee, and he has other meetings. He will be conducting all of them from the office. Okay, and I have Evelyn.
Hello, Reem. Nice to see you. Just a quick follow-up on Maria's question. When will you be making the decision on the high-level meeting?
So because this is still, we still didn't announce or made the decisions regarding June yet. We want to take it step by step to make sure that the decisions are accurate and very relevant to this situation and circumstances. But saying that, the discussions have or are underway with the UN medical director on this, and also with the New York local authorities, because you know that having these meetings hopefully we will be able to have them at the UN as usual. But having these meetings depend on many elements. Some of them will be the situation of COVID-19 pandemic around the world. And the other thing is the ability of the local authorities to receive all the high-level delegations. So the discussions are going, and as soon as we reach a solid decision on that, we will, of course, let you know. Okay, I have 5 minutes because... Please.
You don't have a target date for reaching a decision?
Not yet.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And I'm having 5 minutes because of the President of the Security Council will be here. Pamela?
Thank you, Reem. Thank you for the briefing. A follow-up to the UNGA question. On what basis will you make the decision to have UNGA or not? And how much lead time do you need to allow world leaders to make other plans? There's been the suggestion that there be part virtual, part real. What do you think?
Okay, so yes, thank you. So because these meetings are very important for us, of course. So discussions have started early on them. But you said what are the basis of the decision? As I mentioned, there are many elements. Not only the situation of COVID-19 around the world, or not only the COVID-19 situation in the United States, in New York, but we have to take into account the countries everybody is coming from, and the ability of the local authorities to receive the high-level delegations. Because, as you know, the local authorities are very much involved in providing many of the services needed for receiving those delegations. So circumstances have to be conducive here as well. So we are working with them, we are consulting. We're trying to make this decision as soon as possible. But we heard recently from our office is involved with the local authorities, with the UN medical director, and they also think it's too early to take this decision right now. But discussions are going on, and we will try to take it, of course, as soon as possible, because there are a lot of preparations connected to this in the UN and also around the world.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I have a question from Dulcie Paspolo. Is there a date, at least for the UN Security Council elections? I will check. The dates are on our website. In a letter, one of the letters sent by the President of the General Assembly to member states. But I will check. I don't want to give you a date that's not accurate. I will check, and I will send you an email with the exact date, which is until now. It's the exact date until now. If there is any change, we will update you, of course. Any other questions, please? I have 1 minute. Nothing. Thank you so much, and happy World Press Freedom Day, and happy weekend. Thank you. Goodbye.